Yo everybody, what's going on? This is Keegan from Kman Reviews. If you enjoyed this review, make sure you hit that like and the subscribe button. And if you have any opinions at all that you would like to share, make sure to leave them down in the comment section. xhef and teekoh. Extension of the Hand. xhef is an American underground MC who I've been keeping minor tabs on ever since I discovered him and his music. He recently hopped in my Discord server as well and began to promote his upcoming double concept album, which is the album I am here to review today, called Extension of the Hand, fully produced by teekoh. Very excited to see what this is all about, and let's just dive in. What are my thoughts on Extension of the Hand? Let's find out as I review it track by track. Since I'm pretty sure there were no singles, we will just start at the top of the track list, with that being the title track, Extension of the Hand, which starts off with this incoherent mumbo-jumbo over shrill synth pulses. I think it's a reversed audio tape based on how the syllables sound. I didn't dive deep enough to bother reversing it, which I sure hope is not essential to understanding the concept, even though there are a few of them scattered throughout the track list. But anyway, when xhef finally does start rapping, he's got a very expressive delivery over this foggier, mostly drumless beat. I'm not sure if that fogginess is a mixing issue or that's how it was intended to be done, but either way it sets a nice mood. Lyrically, this just kind of seems like a normal flexing song, sharing his come up and how he barely made it. Now he's on top of his game, although we do catch glimpses that xhef has knowledge on spiritual beliefs. We get some Bible references, he mentions third eyes. The album cover itself is split into two sides, with each side being one half of the Creation of Adam painting. All in all, it's a good track. Palm Right is an alright song, not even 2 minutes long, and has a similar style to the opening title track, except this one's more punchy. There's prominent percussion, nice brass work too, and the typical soul singer sampling in the background that you can expect in this field of rap. Not the biggest fan of xhef's flow, it's a bit inconsistent. He starts off very strong with a catchy cadence, but over the course of the track he goes off beat a few times, which is a bit clunky. Thankfully, he does manage to recover pretty much every time, but it doesn't make for the most appealing song. I like the lyrics here though. The first half feels like he's just bragging about his wealth mainly, and he's extremely happy about his successes, but then suddenly he gets blinded by this light and wakes up in a crime-ridden neighborhood with none of the money or jewelry or nothing. The way the song connects makes me feel like he eventually went bankrupt and was reminiscing about those glory days instead of just being a dream cliche. Despite that though, he looks to this new life as a new beginning for himself. I love the story it tells, even if the actual execution wasn't stellar. RINGFINGER featuring Brent Bronze follows the similar stylistic tropes you'd expect. This time the drums are pretty well in the middle. Not too out there, but also not just completely gone. Just enough to keep the tempo going amidst the wall of layered soul singers making up the majority of the beat. xhef's delivery is pretty solid, a bit of a slower flow and not as vibrantly performed as the previous track, so it feels like a bit of a tonal come down. I love Brent Bronze's delivery here though. It's sharp, it really pierces through the mix, and his deeper voice commands a lot of attention. What I don't really care for though with this one is that transition between xhef and Brent's flow with the chopped up record scratch segment. I feel like it stands out in the worst way and doesn't add anything to the track at all. Lyrically, I'm pretty sure this is just about each MC's undying love and devotion to music and writing, and how it's such a healthy escape from the troubles of the actual world. Again, another solid track, great message as well, but just has some minor quirks that prevent me from truly loving it. thumbsUP is one of the more mellow cuts on the record, severing ties with the drumless hip-hop formula of the opening stretch and leaning into a subtle yet smooth R&B groove with a looping vocal harmony and also no percussion. And it's not like we hear xhef start singing though. He still has a captivating cadence and flow as usual. These lyrics I'm a little bit lost on, but I catch glimpses of mental decay. He dropped out of college, has stage fright and a fear of flying, which is not good for an artist trying to travel and play shows. Ultimately on the brink of insanity until he turned to drugs and the euphoric exposure that it can give. After that, he eventually leaves home, and I think he comes back to his senses on that voyage, becoming a hitchhiker, hoping someone will pick him up and take him home. Very well layered lyrics, and I like the groove of this one too. Good track. Say, the shortest track on the album, barely surpassing 1.5 minutes, and this may just be his most emotive performance I've ever heard from him over this acoustic instrumental of light piano jabs and serene guitar. Never would have expected him to deliver such a fiery verse over it, but it just seems to be like a confession and outburst of emotions targeted at the loss of this person, which I think was a gradual separation that ultimately ended in a death. However, I'm not sure if that was a romantic partner or a family member. I'm gonna guess it's a romantic partner, but it's a little bit too vague to say for certain. Either way, a powerful track and one that's very well written too. Didn't Say jumps back into the R&B vibes with that background sample taking up the bulk of the mix, only leaving enough room for a minimal clicky percussion which you can barely even make out unless xhef isn't rapping his heart out. Sounds like he's on the verge of tears. I do kind of wish that sample and the subsequent vocal harmonies were toned down. They're pretty suffocating, especially when they repeat on loop and kind of take away from xhef's heartfelt message, so much so that it actually took me several times to try and isolate his vocals, which I still don't even feel like I got the full picture. It's a very distracting mix. Lyrically, I'm assuming it's a continuation or possibly alternate perspective of the previous track, Say, seemingly about this relationship fallout slowly getting more and more toxic until it eventually breaks off. I want to like this one more, but I can't ignore this blown out mix. It kind of ruins it and doesn't make me want to revisit the track. FingerFoods is a pretty intimate and kind of haunting song. The vocal snippet that plays on the opening seconds is distorted and pitched down a little bit. Kind of makes me think the track is going to be circling a very personal topic, and that energy level doesn't change throughout the song at all as xhef raps with a cadence that feels like he's reminiscing. Maybe having a little bit of an out-of-body experience over this mellow guitar, metallic rattling for the percussion. The lyrics, though, yet again, really shine. The first verse is an ode or tribute to his aunt, who would always be there as a bit of a stabilizer in his life, especially growing up with her cooking, but remembers her very fondly and is a heartwarming verse. The second verse being about his grandmother, who suddenly suffered a serious stroke in the summer of 2020, and reliving the experiences of her going to a hospital, not in the best care, but ultimately had improvements and is still alive today. There is just so much love, heart, and also anxiety that can be heard through every word of xhef's performance, and makes it one of the most captivating tracks I've heard all year. Hands down my favorite from this album. You Don't Know Me is a triumphant, slower track that closes out the first side of this album. These piercing, opulent synths really stand tall in the background while the bass pulsates and contributes as the only percussion of the track. Xhef matches the song's uplifting nature with a performance that sounds like he's about to burst tears of joy. Maybe that's just the lasting effect of this beat, but that's besides the point. Lyrically, this one I'm a little bit unsure on, but my best assumption is that there's been a lot of tribulation in his life and he uses writing to repurpose his pain into something beautiful, that being his music. Good song, I like it. Left/Dead Nah, which is handed backwards, and it begins the second side of this album with this slowly building synth until it just gets too fast and completely shuts the track down for a good 10 seconds. It's not even like the best transition at all. I'm not even sure if it is one, but kind of a weird way to kick off the song. About 30 seconds in, the actual beat comes in with this echoey bass, reversed snare, and arpeggiating synth. It's a solid enough beat, but the vibe kind of gets ruined when this incessant synth zipping makes its way in. It makes me think the track is going to build to a soaring banger, but never does, which leads to one of the most anticlimactic things on the record. One thing that is pretty interesting, though, is xhef delivering the last minute and a half or so of the track completely in reverse. Neat concept, doesn't make for the most compelling idea for a casual fan, but it does make for an overall solid listen. My Fault/Forever is one of the most bizarre tracks that I've heard come out of this underground hip-hop scene ever. In fact, I wouldn't even call it hip-hop. This is some wild, genre-bending experimentation, jumping asynchronously between two distinct styles. One being this eerie, kinda unnerving, string-dominated, almost operatic section. The other being this upbeat, organic rock style, a little bit of funk that acts as this pseudo-hook. xhef's vocals during that part in particular are extremely blown out, and I find it hilarious because it reminds me of like video game voice chat rooms or crappy Twitch streams where kids like full-on deep throat their microphones, and that's all I can imagine when I think of that. The back leg of this song switches things up again, however. After a good few seconds of silence, it jumps to a luxurious beat that kind of reminds me of that Gorillaz track Pink Phantom with Elton John and Black. As these lyrics just seem to be about acknowledging his own sins, repenting for them, and feeling he isn't worthy of his hand to be met. Definitely more of a core album track than a one-off listen. fathersSUN is probably the closest this album gets to a poppier cut. Doesn't really have the typical structure that would follow a pop song, but it does have a pretty sweet, kind of auto-tuned vocal melody from xhef. Also, the last line of the stanza, essentially being that hook, is a nice touch. Also helps hammer down the lyrical theme of how all the things that happened in his life seem to be hereditary, even going back a second generation as well for his comparisons. I do really like this beat. The brass work is touching and the percussion has a breezy thump to it with its light hissing, the hollow tapping. Just feels like a warm song, and I really like it. And finally, the closer, Outlines, is probably the most mellow way this album could have ended, and I'm glad it did. It's a comforting track. The grouped cooing, light acoustic guitar strumming, and quivering synths add a tonally optimistic polish to the closing 2 minutes of this album. xhef also contributes to that vibe. Instead of the charismatic and emotionally diverse host he's been, he seems to have calmed down for this track, which definitely corroborates these lyrics just about being thankful for it all, pushing away the negativity and giving love. Nice closer. Overall, Extension of the Hand is a bit of a one-of-a-kind sort of album. Sure, there are many hip-hop albums out there that have concepts or unexpected genre experimentations, but at least in all my years, there hasn't been one that traverses such an unpredictable sonic roller coaster like this album does. It almost feels less like a standard body of music and more like it should be accompanied by a visual element. As a result of that roller coaster though, there were some tracks that made for more pleasant experiences than others, makes it a bit more of a bumpy ride than I would have personally liked, but this is the kind of album that thrives the best as one cohesive sequence, rather than just trying to be a hip-hop album filled to the brim with bangers. Also, regarding the concept of the album, I think it's good. I definitely caught a few connective through lines, but I'm by no means a master lyrical analyst. Give this to someone who studies poetry and art for a living and they could get more out of this than I could over countless listens. All in all, my closing statement, go support and listen to some underground music. You don't catch stuff like this in the mainstream. I'm feeling a 7.5 out of 10 on this album. Well guys, hope you enjoyed that review. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.